A sound of grinding gears echoes in the young man's mind. It has been there for as long as he can remember, a constant companion that creeps in at unexpected moments, freezing him at every crossroad. Whenever he hears it, he can do nothing but stop and think. This feeling makes the world seem like a puppet show crafted by some unseen hand. He questions if they are all just puppets, moved by invisible strings, their lives merely scenes in a grand design orchestrated from above. The pressure of this thought becomes unbearable. From within a grand academy building, a desperate cry rings out, a voice declaring it can't take it anymore. Inside, a young man with blonde hair stands with his hand over his heart. He introduces himself as Edward, the first prince, and loudly proclaims the annulment of his engagement to Adrian. He declares he will stay true to his one and only love, Lady Crystal. In response to the prince's declaration, the first young man shouts his agreement, affirming that His Highness Edward is absolutely correct. He finds himself with his hand raised, a look of confusion on his face, as if the action was not his own. The sound of gears grinds once more as he introduces himself to the assembly, Roland Valery Oriole. His narration explains his unique heritage. He was born with the distinctive blessing of Oriole, azure hair and violet eyes, the undeniable proof of a hero throughout history. His birth, the first in 30 years to bear these marks, was the moment a legend became reality. As a child, he could easily wield the legendary Holy Sword, a weapon said to be usable only by heroes. Yet, despite this proof of his destiny, a complication arose. The world had entered a peaceful era, dragons are now considered endangered, and even the Demon King lives quietly in obscurity. In such a time, the Holy Sword had become nothing more than a useless relic. The sword, Belgrade, is now just a spectacle displayed to draw crowds and earn offerings. This leaves Roland as the so-called unemployed hero. He is the eldest son of the Duke Oriole family, one of the 5 great houses whose influence rivals even the royal family. He stood beside the prince, feeling less like a hero and more like a sycophant, just a tendon A in a play he didn't write. His mind flashed back to the moment it all began, the shock still palpable as he recalled the prince's words. An engagement annulment? It couldn't be. The memory continued. Prince Edward had clapped enthusiastically, declaring he knew Roland would agree. As Adrian glared with fury, the prince announced they had found proof. The prince then addressed the assembled crowd, proclaiming the evidence was undeniable proof that Adrian had tried to frame Lady Crystal. He implored everyone to lend their support and declared that the matter of Adrian's wrongdoing would be settled at the graduation party, 6 months from then. His words ignited the room. A chorus of supporters roared their approval for His Highness. Roland, caught in the tide, realized the prevailing sentiment. Anyone foolish enough to be swayed by a wicked woman like Adrian should be cast aside without hesitation. The memory of the event faded, leaving him alone in his study. He clutched his head, overwhelmed. How had it all come to this? He agonized over the details. The plan was supposed to be foolproof. He had advised the prince and his inner circle to keep the annulment quiet for now, to handle it subtly. But he knew even then that it was only a matter of time before everything unraveled. His troubled thoughts were suddenly shattered by a woman's voice. A maid stood over him, asking if he, and she as well, had finally come to their senses. He let out a startled cry, demanding to know who she was and how she had entered. The woman, introducing herself as Elena Quagliard, the all-purpose maid of the Oriole household, calmly explained that to avoid making unnecessary noise, she had simply come in through the ceiling. She stepped forward, asking what he thought when he looked at her. Flustered, Roland could only comment that her uniform looked clean. Elena pressed on, pointing out the ribbon in her hair, a gift from him 5 years prior, and her new perfume, leaving him utterly bewildered. He stood bewildered, questioning what had just transpired with his maid. Before he could fully process her sudden appearance, she thanked him for his care and announced she would immediately fetch Lady Ruin. Just then, a young woman burst into the room, addressing him as her older brother. It was Ruin. She demanded to know if he had finally returned to his senses, then immediately pressed him for his opinion on Prince Edward, his circle of influential heirs, and Baroness Crystal. He paused to consider her point of question. After a moment, he gave his blunt assessment. Prince Edward is an absolute fool, and the nobles in his faction are merely lemmings eagerly boarding a sinking ship. As for Lady Crystal, he concluded, she is simply a victim, forced to carry the weight of a love-struck prince's ideals and the noble's self-interest. Her expression softened with relief at his words, though she lamented that he had come to this realization far too late. This was Ruin, Roland's cousin, who now held the title of his younger sister. Elena, having returned, agreed. She recounted how strange his behavior had been for the past 6 months, filled with endless praise for Lady Crystal and constant complaints about Lady Adrian. It was so unlike him, she explained, that they had all been deeply worried. Ruin added that Lady Adrian is so graceful, while Elena concluded that the young master had been far too influenced by those fools. He absorbed their words, a troubled look crossing his face as he sank into a chair. Everyone could see his strange behavior, but he himself couldn't understand why he had lost control. Seeing his internal struggle, Ruin gently asked him to explain what had happened. His explanation began with a memory from 1 year prior. Lady Crystal had transferred into their academy, and Prince Edward fell for her instantly. This was despite the fact that his fiancée, Lady Adrian, had already been chosen by the king himself. For a prince to relentlessly pursue a baron's daughter was unthinkable, and the duke's faction grew concerned, foreseeing disaster. He remembered his own weary reaction to the prince's infatuation at the time, a resigned sigh escaping him as he thought, "Here we go again." This was nothing new. Having observed Prince Edward since childhood, he was all too familiar with his impulsive and emotional nature, recalling the endless stream of praise for Crystal at Adrian's expense. The memory then plunged deeper into the past, to when both he and the prince were merely 8 years old. Prince Edward had made an absurdly serious demand of the king and queen to make Roland his official wife, proclaiming him more charming than Adrian. The young prince had even formally presented this ridiculous request, causing a young Roland to panic at the thought of the social upheaval such a union would require. He continued to reflect on the prince's nature. To put a positive spin on it, Edward was bold and decisive. He never bent to the opinions of others, a stubbornness that, while selfish, could be seen as a reliable quality for a nation's leader. That said, Roland acknowledged that the prince had far too many flaws. To compensate for these shortcomings, a group of talented individuals, including Roland himself, had been gathered around him. Yet, the effort was ultimately in vain. Before he realized it, the prince had become the very thing he and the others had been trying to prevent. Ruin explains the grim reality of the situation. In order to marry Lady Crystal, Prince Edward and his supporters have conspired to paint Lady Adrian as a villain, concocting an outrageous plan to break their engagement. She notes that even her brother, Roland, and the other salon members were supporting this scheme. Elena adds a more dire detail. Other young noblemen, completely infatuated with Lady Crystal, have begun to follow the prince's lead, nonsensically accusing their own fiancés and demanding their engagements be annulled. She calls it a hellish scene, leaving Roland to listen in stunned silence. He processes this, his expression hardening. The salon members, who should be the ones to stop the prince, are instead supporting him. Roland understands the terrifying implication. The prince's word is absolute. If he commands it, they could easily fabricate evidence or find false witnesses to frame Lady Adrian for attempting to harm Lady Crystal. The sheer power they wield is frightening. His thoughts spiral to the wider consequences. If the prince breaks the engagement without the king's permission, it would shatter the aristocratic system and ruin the crown's reputation. From abroad, other nations would perceive it as the country collapsing, which could at worst lead to an invasion. As he contemplates this, Elena turns to Ruin, asking for her thoughts. She points out that Ruin is the only one in the family with the same lime blue hair and violet eyes as Roland. Ruin simply states that she was blessed by Oriole. Ruin elaborates that, because of this blessing, she was welcomed into the main family as an adopted daughter. This prompts Roland to reflect on his own title. The hero of Oriole was once just a fairy tale, but he proved the legend was real, bringing glory to the Oriole ducal family and earning the people's support. Elena, however, voices a grave concern. If that very hero were to now align with those foolish nobles, he would be seen as betraying the people's trust and would surely be hated for it. The weight of this possibility settles heavily on Roland. The realization dawns on Ruin, her face pale with fear. She understands that if Roland hadn't regained his senses, she and Elena could have met the same fate, branded as witches. Elena shudders, agreeing that they would have been dragged down and punished as well. Ruin turns to her brother, asking if he finally understands the gravity of it all. Humbled, Roland can only agree and apologize. He now fully comprehends the situation. His expression shifts to one of focused determination as he brings a hand to his chin. It is time, he declares, to figure out what to do next. He begins to formulate a plan. The first step is to convince Prince Edward and the others to change their minds, to make them understand the consequences of their foolish actions. So the plan goes no further. He envisions a scenario where everyone involved, including Lady Adrian, offers a sincere apology, leading to a happy end for all parties. Hearing this idealistic proposal, Ruin remarks that it sounds ideal, but her tone is skeptical. She immediately challenges him, questioning if he truly believes such a perfect solution is achievable within the next 6 months. Roland is caught off guard, his confidence faltering. She presses further, reminding him of the past. At first, she says, even he and the other salon members were frowning upon the prince's selfishness. They all knew it was wrong. With a piercing gaze, she asks the critical question, when did he change his mind? He has no answer. Roland looks away, admitting that he honestly doesn't know. It just happened, without any of them realizing it. His mind drifts to an image of Lady Crystal as he wonders aloud, to himself, why they all became so captivated by someone they had just met. He began to recount the events, explaining to Elena that he believed it all started shortly after Lady Crystal transferred to the academy. The first time he ever spoke to her, he recalled, was when she approached him in the school building. He continued, stating that after their initial meeting, they happened to run into each other several more times. Ruin immediately questioned if he felt a sense of fate in those moments, but he insisted that at the time, she seemed like a perfectly ordinary girl. Elena, however, repeated his words with a hint of suspicion. To illustrate, he recalled specific instances, reaching for the same book in a library, helping her when she tripped, or assisting her search for a dropped item. Before he realized it, the prince's infatuation seemed to have spread to him, leaving him unable to stop thinking about Crystal. As he finished, Ruin remarked that it all felt far too convenient, questioning if so many coincidences could truly happen so perfectly. Elena conceded that from what she'd seen from afar, Lady Crystal was a delicate and charming young woman, so it wouldn't be strange for someone to develop feelings for her after a few meetings. He countered that every time they met, he was acting on impulse or doing something random. It wasn't as if she could have planned for their encounters. The only explanation he could offer was coincidence, and he resolved to simply call it that for now. Ruin then pointed out that the other members of the salon had also been completely captivated, leading them to fully support Prince Edward's romance with her. Roland found this deeply strange, as they'd all known the prince and Crystal were a couple from the start. Yet no one felt jealous. Instead, they all cheered for them wholeheartedly. He considered Prince Edward's possessive and single-minded nature, realizing the prince would never allow such a situation to continue. Yet, for 6 months, Edward had been fully aware of his retainer's feelings for Crystal and accepted it without doubting their loyalty. The only conclusion he could draw was that it was as if they had all been enchanted. They were treating the prince and Crystal like the main characters of a fairy tale, doing everything possible to eliminate any obstacles in their path. Hearing this, Ruin questioned the theory. If Lady Crystal was using magic, how could it work on him? She reminded him that since childhood, he'd been blessed by Oberon and Titania, the fairy king and queen, which meant magic and curses shouldn't affect him. He acknowledged her point, adding that the academy itself is protected by the best anti-magic barriers and overseen by court mages. Could she have bypassed all of that to cast a spell? Despite the impossibilities, he concluded that the situation was undeniably strange and that they must consider the worst-case scenario. He listened as Elena spoke with grim intensity, her hands clasped before her. She argued that there could be no mercy for their enemies. Once hostility is shown, they must be treated as such. She felt a malevolent force was at work, setting gears in motion that would lead to destruction. Therefore, she insisted, they must act swiftly and decisively, destroying their foes before they themselves are destroyed. His sister, Ruin, agreed enthusiastically. She added that he, her brother, will be there to help everyone facing misfortune. She framed the conflict as an opportunity that would benefit both their country and their family, allowing them to finally deal with those they considered foolish people once and for all. She continued, explaining a trait of the women in their family. Once they perceive someone as an enemy, they eliminate them without a second thought. Beaming, she declared the whole prospect fantastic. Fired up by this, Elena clenched her fist and shouted that they must swiftly take care of their enemies. He, however, remained silent, his expression troubled. The entire situation felt completely unjust to him. The happiness Prince Edward envisioned with Lady Crystal was, in his mind, built upon the suffering of the innocent Lady Adrian. This fundamental injustice did not sit right with him, and he quietly acknowledged this grim reality to himself. As he stood with his back to the others, lost in these thoughts, Elena watched him with a steady, determined gaze. She then spoke, her voice firm and clear, announcing that she had made up her mind. Amidst the refined atmosphere of a department store, a crisis erupts. As Roland and Adrian stand together, a shout cuts through the rising panic, demanding everyone to wait. One of the perpetrators, brandishing a dagger, threatens to kill the female hostages, claiming to possess a bong. Roland quickly assesses the situation. The weapons are real, but the bong is likely a bluff. He decides against provoking them, instead stepping forward to address the man, calmly asking to stop the violence. He continues his attempt at de-escalation, speaking of communication as a bridge to mutual understanding. His words only enrage the man, who screams for him to shut up. Before the situation can worsen, another voice cuts in sharply, ordering the man, Igor, to stand down. This newcomer, Kirill, is immediately challenged by a large, armored accomplice. The armored man argues for killing the rich nobles to make an example of them, but Kirill counters, explaining that nobles are far more valuable as hostages or tools for negotiation. With the immediate danger quelled by the internal dispute, Adrian turns to Roland with a sigh of exasperation. She remarks that if he intended to stop the man, he should have done so sooner. Roland, brushing his hair aside, merely notes that his bangs are now a mess. Later, the scene has shifted. Adrian is now speaking with Lady Ruin, thanking her for the exhibition tickets she had provided. She expresses her genuine gladness that Ruin was able to attend. Ruin smiles and gestures to her companion, introducing her as their maid, Elena Qualiart. In another conversation, Adrian offers a cool greeting to one of Prince Edward's attendants. She then makes a pointed remark, finding it concerning that the prince's fiancée has such a poor memory that she cannot even recall people's names. The attendant presses, noting she has avoided the salon for 6 months. Adrian retorts that she only remembers those who interest her. With a sharp smile, she adds that she has heard rumors of a certain charming individual warming her seat, a clear jab at his new relationship. Her words leave him speechless. She stands firm, her expression making it clear that any reconciliation or alliance with her feels almost impossible. Watching from a distance, Roland is struck with profound regret. He admits to himself that even if he was out of his mind when he wronged her, it was still his fault, and she has every right to be so harsh. He is immediately confronted by one of the hostage-takers, who scoffs at his noble status. The man declares his hatred for the carefree attitude of the aristocracy, while Roland hesitantly admits he is, in a way, a noble. The man continues his tirade, assuming Roland has never had a struggle for money or women. Roland attempts to protest, but his captor cuts him off, insisting that his privileged life is perfectly clear at a glance. He reveals that he comes from a backwater village and hadn't even worn proper wooden clogs before arriving in the city. He bitterly asks Roland if he has any idea how miserable it feels to have neither money nor the affection of women. Roland looks on, taken aback. Suddenly, Adrienne's voice cuts through the tension. She declares that there is no way she could possibly understand his feelings. While acknowledging his upbringing might warrant some sympathy, she admonishes him that it doesn't justify resorting to crime. She tells him to reflect on his own foolishness first, suggesting his personality, not his poverty, is why women dislike him. From nearby, Elena loudly proclaims that Adrian is absolutely right. The other hostage-taker, stunned by the women's defiance, asks if they all belong to Roland, who can only stare in shocked silence. He closes his eyes, a bead of sweat trickling down his face, and quietly pleads with them to just keep quiet if they are worried about him. Ignoring his plea, the light-haired woman cheerfully identifies Adrian as Roland's little sister, before correcting herself to say that Adrian actually has a complicated crush on him. Elena then introduces herself as the young master's maid, his loyal hound who knows all his secrets. A flustered Adrian insists she meant a loyal servant to the Oriole family, not just him. The main captor, now thoroughly confused, asks if Adrian isn't with Roland. Elena attempts to clarify their complicated and, in her words, disgraceful relationship. She explains that as nobles, they exchange formalities while also occasionally stabbing each other with words, only to be stabbed in return. Adrian cries out her name in exasperation. Having reached his breaking point, Roland bellows for them to stop provoking him, shouting that he's had enough. The captor clutches his head, overwhelmed by the chaos. His patience shattered. The man roars for Roland to shut up and die, lunging forward with his sword. Roland, caught off guard, suggests they talk it out. The armored captor observes that their group is now united in their intent to attack, as the women urge Roland to take care of them quickly. As the attacker lunged, Roland met the threat not with fear, but with a resigned sigh. He concluded there was no other choice. With a sudden, powerful cry, he surged forward, cane in hand. Behind him, Elena watched in stunned disbelief, calling out for him to wait. A thought struck her with the force of a revelation. Could this be the true power of the holy sword wielder? Inside a grand hall, Roland Valerie Oriole sweats, his mind reeling from the recent confrontation. He is being admonished for his recklessness, with his interrogator questioning his sanity for facing an armed group with only a cane. Observing the exchange from a distance are his maid, Elena, and an older, mustached butler, both wearing expressions of stern concern. The one lecturing him is Lady Adrian. She stands before him, her voice sharp with frustration and relief, declaring that they were lucky to apprehend the culprits without injury. She stresses that if things had gone even slightly wrong, it could have been a complete disaster. He struggles to find a response, wondering inwardly what he should do, as she shows no signs of calming down. As his displeasure shows on his face, the butler interjects, advising the young master that he shouldn't show such an expression to a lady. Adrian, however, is not finished, sighing in exasperation before demanding that Roland stop looking around and pay attention. She continues her lecture, questioning if he realizes the weight of the many subjects and citizens he carries on his shoulders. Roland retorts with a dismissive smile that of course he doesn't, is why he acted so recklessly. Internally, however, he concedes that she might be right, though being lectured so intensely is difficult to endure. From afar, two young noblemen observe the scene. One wonders aloud if Prince Edward became so jaded from being constantly lectured in this manner. The other agrees it's a valid point, adding that the prince was, after all, raised being spoiled. The tense atmosphere is broken when a light-haired young woman addresses Lady Adrian directly. She confesses that she was actually quite captivated by how gallant her brother-in-law looked when he instantly incapacitated the ruffians. Elena quickly agrees, adding that from the moment they were rescued, all the other ladies who were saved were gazing at the young master with misty, admiring eyes. The three women reflect on the situation. For the hero to be scolded by the princess he saved, it is, they agree, a difficult world they live in. Absolutely. She listened as the butler attempted to downplay the events, asking what they were discussing so casually. He explained that Roland had merely raised his cane reflexively, which happened to deflect a blade and set off a chain reaction that tripped up the assailants, allowing for their easy capture. Her expression hardened with skepticism. She challenged the explanation, questioning if they truly believed the process could be ignored as long as the result was favorable. To her, it was clearly more than just luck. At that moment, the light-haired woman interjected, assuring Adrian that it was not chance at all. She stated with confidence that from the moment he deflected the blade, everything had proceeded according to her brother-in-law's precise calculations. Adrienne's gaze snapped towards Roland, her disbelief evident. She demanded to know if he, a man who was neither the royal fencing instructor nor the captain of the guard, had truly planned the entire affair. With a slightly sheepish smile, he admitted that he had, more or less. He began to explain that while it sounded unbelievable, he had indeed aimed for that outcome. He revealed that he was born as a true chosen hero, naturally endowed with abilities powerful enough to rival dragons and demon lords. Fortunately, his birth in a peaceful era meant he had only needed to use those abilities a few times before. He continued, noting that to avoid confusion, most of his deeds had not been made public. Therefore, he understood why it was difficult for her to believe that he had dealt with the armed group through careful calculation. Seeing Adrienne's lingering doubt, the light-haired woman offered to share some of her brother-in-law's many wonderful anecdotes, suggesting they might convince her. The mention of anecdotes caught Adrienne's attention, just as the woman had a sudden flash of inspiration. She then recounted a shocking story, asking if Adrian knew that at just 9 years old, Roland had single-handedly defeated 5 assassins targeting His Highness. The memory of a small, determined Roland protecting the young prince flashed before them. Adrian could only stare, utterly speechless. Adrian voiced her disbelief, calling the story ridiculous and arguing that such an event would have caused a major commotion. The woman calmly explained that a gag order was issued. It would have been a disgrace to the royal family if it became known that a child had single-handedly protected the prince, but she insisted it was a fact well known to a select few. As the story was told, Roland broke into a nervous sweat. He remembered that day clearly. The excited young prince had been on the verge of running off to tell everyone what Roland had done. The memory was still a source of acute self-awareness for him. He acknowledges her skepticism, admitting that his story is indeed hard to believe. Seizing the opportunity, Elena steps in to offer another piece of evidence. She asks Lady Adrian if she is familiar with the Dorrance rebellion incident that occurred in the Demon Lord's territory 5 years prior. The incident refers to a rebellion by the subordinates of the Demon Lord Dorrance. Once a nemesis to humanity in prehistoric times, the Demon Lord now lives peacefully in a neighboring country. His underlings, dissatisfied with this peace, attempted to establish their own autonomous region. Adrian confirms that she knows of the event, recalling that it was suppressed by foreign troops before a full-scale coup could take place. Elena agrees, but clarifies that this is merely the official story known to the public. She reveals the truth. At the secret request of the current Demon Lord and the Holy Church, Roland single-handedly and covertly suppressed the entire rebel army. This information, she adds, is a state secret known only to a select few. Roland sheepishly remarks that even if he had told this story himself, no one would have believed him, causing Elena to panic at the casual discussion of state secrets. Adrian, however, simply lets out a light laugh, scoffing at the incredible tale. Undeterred, the light-haired woman beside Roland eagerly offers another example. She brings up the incident from 2 years ago in the royal capital, when the great beast Behemoth went on a rampage. She proudly declares that her brother-in-law, Roland, gallantly saved Prince Edward's sister, who was present at the time. Adrienne's expression changes to one of sudden recognition. She connects the event to a scandalous rumor that was even reported in the newspapers, a supposed passionate love affair between Princess Rosalind and Lord Roland. He realizes with dismay that in the public's mind, only the fabricated love affair remains. He clarifies what truly happened. To protect the spectators from the rampaging behemoth, he swiftly summoned his own beast, Belgrand, and sliced the monster in half. However, because the event took place in a very public location, it drew a great deal of attention. The news was initially set to spread as a heroic tale of Roland defeating the behemoth. But the story that ultimately gained more traction was the love affair report from a gossip magazine. The light-haired woman, Princess Rosalind, explains with a flustered expression that this was because she fell head over heels for Roland's heroic actions. Roland looks completely bewildered by her confession. As Princess Rosalind begins to confess that she unilaterally broke off her engagement with a neighboring prince, Elena quickly clamps a hand over her mouth, silencing her with a muffled cry. Her attempt is not entirely successful. As Adrian turns, having caught the word engagement and questioning what it was about, Elena nervously dismisses it, insisting it was nothing. Roland recalls the disastrous fallout. After the princess arbitrarily declared their engagement broken, she began stalking him. Now, she is kept in isolation under the pretext of recuperating from illness, making the topic utterly taboo. The consequences spiral further. To prevent exposing such a disgrace to the royal family, the true story of the hero defeating the behemoth was completely buried. In its place, a fabricated report of a love affair was planted in a gossip magazine to control the narrative. He stands by, completely bewildered by the situation, wondering what could possibly be going on in the minds of the royal siblings, Prince Edward and Princess Rosalind, whose actions seem so erratic. Sensing Adrian's lingering doubt, Elena pivots, asking if she has perhaps heard of the renowned absolute champion Roland, the man who won the Royal Capital Swordsmanship Tournament 4 years in a row. Adrian places a hand on her chest, confirming that she has indeed heard of him. She admits she would rather not have such an embarrassing title mentioned, but concedes that a reputation of that level might be what's needed for her to believe their story. Roland shrinks in the background, mortified. She then recalls that in the previous tournament, Prince Edward's own confidence dominated the podium. She muses that His Highness must have felt quite proud placing the medals around her necks, but dismisses it as only natural for a festival with a 200-year history. Hearing her casual observation, a thought suddenly strikes Roland. He glances at her, wondering if she thinks the tournament was rigged. Adrian, however, delivers a sharp verdict. She declares that regardless of the others, Prince Edward himself possesses absolutely no charm without his title. She concludes that people in a salon must choose their allegiances carefully, lest they risk lowering their own standing by associating with him. Her conversation is interrupted by the arrival of her escort, Roland. Bidding farewell to the other ladies, Adrian agrees to chat with Lady Renee another time and prepares to depart. As he watches her, Roland realizes that Adrian's distrust for the prince's circle is far deeper than he had anticipated. His mind drifts back to their childhood, recalling that they hadn't interacted very much back then. He remembers, however, that their relationship wasn't bad at all. In fact, looking back, he feels it should have been considered quite good. He finds himself wondering if there is any way to return to that simpler time, to that connection they once shared. But the reality of the present weighs on him. He knows that he and the others are to blame for her current feelings. He feels he cannot simply bow his head in apology, leaving him to question what action he should take, especially with the prince involved. Meanwhile, Elena and Princess Rosalind watch the pair depart. They lament their failure, realizing they couldn't convey any of Roland's good qualities, and instead only managed to elicit more complaints about Prince Edward. The path forward, they conclude, seems fraught with difficulty. As she walks away, the sound of her heels echoes on the polished floor. Her expression is unreadable, lost in thought. Her mind races, trying to make sense of the situation. A single, uncertain question surfaces. What now? Inside a well-appointed room, a maid presents an extravagant bouquet to Lady Adrian, announcing that a get-well-flower arrangement has arrived from Lord Roland and Lady Renee. The maid then observes that, in stark contrast, they haven't received even a token gift from His Highness Edward. Adrian finishes the thought internally, taking a slow sip of her tea with a placid expression. She tells her maid that it can't be helped, explaining that they are officially supposed to have not been there at the time of the incident. The maid looks on, holding the large bouquet. Her gaze drifts, a flicker of memory crossing her features as she stares into the distance. The memory transports her to the past, to the grounds of a grand palace, where a young boy's indignant voice once shouted, questioning how she could possibly be his fiancée. The scene solidifies, revealing a 7-year-old Prince Edward and a 7-year-old Adrian. The young prince cruelly declares that she is just an ugly, slant-eyed girl with flashy hair. He continues his tirade, stating that he dislikes red-headed women because they seem too strong-willed. Standing before him, a young Adrian realizes this must be why her grandfather brought her to the royal palace, though she had never heard anything about an engagement before. The young prince then turns to his father, complaining loudly that he doesn't want to be engaged to such a low-class woman and questioning her disrespectful, silent attitude. In the background, his father sternly tells him to stop. His tantrum reaches a peak as he suggests they give her to his younger brother, Jeremy, instead. His words are cut short by a powerful man's voice roaring, "Fool." The shout makes young Adrian flinch. The furious man is revealed to be Adrian's grandfather, Duke Gerardier, who stands with arms crossed, demanding to know how they dare insult his precious granddaughter. In response, the king forces his son's head down in a bow, offering a deep and immediate apology to the duke for the prince's behavior. His fury erupted at the young prince's insolence. When Edward dared to call him the mere duke, he thundered back, reminding the boy that he was addressing the honorary president of the House of Nobles, a man with no right to succession and thus no different from commoner in his eyes. The prince recoiled in shock. He then turned his wrath upon the king, grabbing the stunned prince by the shoulder. He declared with finality that he would never give his granddaughter to a man with such poor judgment and a rotten personality. It would be the Gerardier family, he proclaimed, who would refuse this engagement. His declaration left both the king and his son utterly speechless, their eyes wide with disbelief at the duke's audacity. Faced with such a powerful rebuke, the king immediately humbled himself. He admitted their shortcomings and pleaded for the duke to calm his anger, forcing his son to offer an apology as well. Watching the scene unfold, young Adrian internally sighed at what a boring man the prince was, still muttering even as his father apologized. She offered her own formal apology, though her thoughts were less than charitable. The memory then shifts back to her arrival. She had been lured by the words royal palace, expecting a grand castle from fairy tale, but found it surprisingly modest. Her gaze drifted to a sturdy tree outside, a much more tempting prospect for adventure. She mused that while her position required her to maintain a certain decorum, she truly preferred playing outside. Her thoughts were suddenly interrupted by a gentle voice from behind, greeting the beautiful princess. She turned, startled. Before her stood a young boy with a kind smile. He introduced himself as Roland, the only child of the Duke of Oriol, and politely asked for the honor of knowing her name. Adrian could only stare, taken aback. Her surprise quickly melted into admiration. She thought he was both cool and cute, a stark contrast to the dim-witted prince she had just met. This, she realized with a blush, was the kind of fairy tale development she had been hoping for. He watched as the young girl, Adrian, granddaughter of Duke Jardier, formally introduced herself. With a bright smile, he replied that the pleasure was all his. Noticing her gaze from earlier, he mentioned a tree she had been looking at, warning her that its top was withered and dangerous. He then offered to show her other, safer trees that were easier to climb. He cheerfully added that he was also quite good at tree climbing, an activity she likely couldn't enjoy in her current setting. In the background, a frustrated Prince Edward could be seen, still being attended to after his fall. Her younger self, captivated, asked if she could join him. In the present, Adrian recalled the memory, thinking to herself how wonderful Lord Roland had been. Her thoughts were interrupted by a maid, who marveled at receiving flowers, a card, and even a cake from him. Adrian, looking on, quietly affirmed the gesture. The maid gushed about how Roland had also gallantly saved her from thieves before, declaring him strong, cool, and a true gentleman. A flustered Elena tried to temper her excitement, as Adrian agreed. She reflected on her past self, who had thought Roland might be all right. But now, she lamented, he was just a dim-witted attendant to the prince, seemingly wrapped around the finger of some baron's daughter. The maid, Sophia, smiled warmly as she read the card, glad to be doing well after the previous day's events. Adrian, however, looked away with a pained expression, thinking that Roland was far from a gentleman. Her mind drifted back to the engagement with the prince that had almost been called off. She remembered how the king's father had pleaded with her own, asking them to believe in his son's potential and future education, until he finally accepted. With a sigh, she thought about how her grandfather had possessed keen insight. She regretted that they hadn't refused the engagement back then, feeling sorry for His Majesty, but lamenting their decision. Prince Edward approaches Roland, his voice booming with excitement. He announces that he heard from his father about Roland's heroic feat, single-handedly crushing a group of thieves at the Lost Belt department store. Roland looks stunned by the public declaration, realizing they must have made a mistake in his education. His praise echoes through the classroom as he slaps a hand on Roland's desk, proclaiming how truly proud he is. The other students turn to watch the spectacle. He panics, gesturing for the prince to stop. Edward seems utterly confused by the reaction, asking what he's talking about. Roland understands the danger. If it became public that the sons and daughters of ducal houses were endangered at the Lost Belt department store, the owner's reputation would be completely ruined. But the prince continues, a smirk on his face. He explains that to prevent the collapse of the Lost Belt family, which accounts for a significant portion of the country's tax revenue, there is an official cover story. The incident is being reported as a rampage by unruly demons, with civilians caught in the crossfire. Roland is aghast, realizing Edward is loudly discussing something that was meant to be a state secret. He tries to deny everything, claiming he wasn't even at the department store that day, and that Edward must be confusing him with someone else. The memory of a stern warning to never speak of the incident flashes through his mind. The prince abruptly changes his tune, laughing and claiming he must have been mistaken. Roland watches him, wary of the sudden shift. Edward then leans in, stating there's one more thing he wants to ask. He reveals his intention to give Miss Crystal a gift to commemorate the upcoming spring festival. He suggests a ruby brooch might be nice, and asks for Roland's opinion. Roland's expression darkens, his annoyance clear. He internally fumes at the prince's audacity. Ignoring his own fiancée to give a gift to an unrelated woman is insane. Furthermore, he believes Miss Crystal would likely be troubled by such an extravagant and sudden present. For now, however, he decides to play along. He suggests that the thought itself would make her happy, proposing emeralds or pearls as alternatives. Edward considers this, noting the symbolic meanings of fulfillment of love for emeralds and purity for pearls, deeming them suitable for Miss Crystal. With renewed determination, he declares he will prepare the highest quality of both gems. As he speaks, The classroom door slides open, and Adrian enters, her expression unreadable as she clutches a book. The prince stops mid-sentence, his eyes widening in surprise at her sudden appearance. He paid his fiancée no mind, instead turning his full attention to Crystal the next morning in the classroom. With a beaming smile, he loudly declared that he had saved his seat for her and urged her to come sit next to him. A flustered Crystal could only manage a stammered good morning in reply. As the prince's boisterous display continued, Adrian watched with a cold, impassive expression. A small, gnome-like figure suddenly appeared, ringing a bell and announcing that class was starting. In the background, the instructor began a lecture on legends. Speaking of an enchantment feared as the evil eye, she ignored the lecture, her thoughts consumed by the scene before her. Roland, sitting nearby, observed her distraction. He recalled Crystal's full name, Crystal Rita Chesty, daughter of a baron, and wondered why she was suddenly being put on a pedestal, particularly only among the salon members. Adrian, meanwhile, conceded that Crystal was cute, but found she no longer felt anything for the girl. Her quiet reflection was broken by the prince's continued advances. He leaned toward Crystal, asking if something was wrong. Roland found the display intensely annoying. He understood being captivated by a lovely appearance, but thought to himself that it was not admirable to stare so openly. A chill ran down his spine as he realized how terrifying it was that, until recently, he had seriously followed such a man. This unsettling thought solidified his resolve. He wondered where his maid, Elena, had gone. He decided it was necessary to look into Crystal's situation again and made a mental note to have Elena double-check everything when he returned home. Within a cluttered room overlooking a grand castle, a young boy sits up in bed, a hollow laugh escaping his lips as he gazes out the window. His hand reaches for the curtain, pulling it aside just enough to peer down into the ground below. From his vantage point, he spots two other boys. One, a child with dark hair, looks up with wide eyes. The other, a blonde boy, recognizes the watcher, identifying him as Jeremy and noting that he's there again. The blonde boy grabs his friend, Roland, by the arm, urging him to leave. He complains that Jeremy is always watching them in silence, finding it creepy. A startled Roland glances back up toward the window. He stands frozen for a moment, staring back at the window from which he was being watched. Back in his room, Jeremy reflects on the boy, Roland, a commoner who's been associating with his older brother, Prince Edward. He questions the boy's intentions. This is Jeremy, the second prince and younger brother to Edward, his expression cool and calculated. A young woman with a concerned look on her face is introduced, Constance, who is Jeremy's fiancée. She stands in a vast book-lined study, watching as Jeremy sits at his desk, his back turned to her and a maid. He's surrounded by towering stacks of books, lost in his own world. His impassive face is reflected on the dark surface of the tea in his cup, a perfect mirror of his quiet intensity. He listened as his fiancée, Constance, concluded her report with a nervous tremor in her voice. She confirmed that this was the full account of what had transpired at the Lost Bell department store. She continued, explaining that while the incident didn't escalate into a major event, they were unfortunately unable to inflict any particular damage on Adrienne's side. She assured him that multiple precautions had been taken to ensure their involvement would not be exposed, and that the direct perpetrators had already been dealt with. He remained silent, his expression unreadable. Undeterred, Constance affirmed their ongoing strategy. They would continue to spread rumors that Adrienne's faction was harassing Crystal. She added that they were prepared to harm Crystal directly if necessary, hoping that if actual harm was done, Prince Edward's faction would lose patience and take action, leading to their mutual downfall. His gaze remained cool as he finally spoke. He stated that he didn't mind if she wanted to settle personal grudges, as her targets were providing an opening to be attacked. However, he issued a stern warning, hoping that this time she wouldn't get her priorities wrong. A sharp rebuke struck her with force. Constance immediately dropped into a deep, prostrating bow. Her voice filled with panic as she apologized profusely. She swore that next time she would surely meet his expectations. He watched her bowed form with a detached air, one finger resting on his chin. He simply stated that he would wait, but without expecting much. His dismissive words echoed in her mind, triggering a flood of memories. Constance reflected on why she was doing any of this. She had been born to a distinguished family, beautiful and brilliant, destined to be the crown princess. That was supposed to have been her path. But instead, Her fate was tied to the one she considered the good-for-nothing second prince. It was all over. The memories sharpened, focusing on her childhood resentment. The position she had desperately wanted, that of the first prince's fiancée, belonged to another, a stuck-up woman named Adrian. She recalled that irritating woman with a scowl. For the sake of her family, however, she had reluctantly begun visiting the second prince to curry favor. She remembered introducing herself to the young prince, her voice polite, but strange. Her memory of that first meeting was vivid. From that very moment, she had felt it, an unsettling, inexplicable sense that something about Prince Jeremy was profoundly off. She recalled his emotionless, dark, murky eyes, and a black room filled with occult books and tools from her childhood memories. It was as if she were being swallowed by darkness, a feeling that overwhelmed her even as a young girl. During that time, her father had spoken with the king, expressing his delight that his daughter was growing close to Prince Jeremy. The king, in turn, was relieved that his reserved son had finally found someone he could trust. Despite their parents' hopes, an inexplicable fear kept her from defying the young prince. Before she knew it, a master-servant relationship had formed under the guise of their engagement. Then, one day, she heard news concerning Prince Edward. Back in the present, Jeremy scoffed at what he was reading, remarking that it was laughably stupid. His brother was apparently head over heels for some baron's daughter and intended to marry her. She was taken aback, immediately asking if His Majesty knew about this and fretting over what would happen to Lady Adrian if the engagement was called off. Jeremy calmly replied that their father did not know and he had no intention of telling him. He looked up at her with an unsettling smile, finding it unexpected that she was worried about Adrian. He had thought she would be happy, reasoning that if those two were to fall from grace, she would get what she had always wanted. Constance froze, realizing with a jolt of fear that he could see right through her. She affirmed to herself that this man was terrifying. Yet, his words echoed in her mind. If Edward and his fiancée were to disappear, Prince Jeremy would become the next in line for the throne, and her dream of becoming queen would finally be attainable. After that conversation, she had worked tirelessly to bring about their downfall. She reported to Jeremy that spreading bad rumors about Adrian was going well, but admitted that the department store incident had been rushed. She confessed her greed, wanting to leave even a small scar on Adrian's face, and acknowledged that hiring low-level demons was a mistake. As she spoke, she wondered what Prince Jeremy was truly thinking, as he didn't seem interested in the throne. She speculated that it might be more about getting back at Prince Edward. However, simply stated that whatever the case, he would get what he wants. She had just finished speaking when Constance's attention was suddenly drawn to a stack of books. A large, dark spider sat motionless upon the topmost volume, and her eyes widened in alarm. She recoiled with a startled cry, but he remained calm, his expression hardening with suspicion. He recognized it immediately, not a simple arachnid, but a magical bug designed for eavesdropping. He quietly wondered who could have planted it. His mind raced, quickly identifying the culprit. The maid who had served their tea just moments before. It had to be her. With a sudden surge of urgency, he thrust his hand forward, shouting for the guards to seize the intruder. His command echoed, just as the maid, Elena, was making her way down the corridor. She stopped, realizing instantly that she had been discovered. Back in the study, Constance could only stare, stunned by the abrupt turn of events. Having been found out, Elena shed her disguise in a flash. Now clad in a dark, practical combat uniform, she stood poised on a high stone ledge, ready to make her escape. She launched herself into the night, leaping across the rooftops with silence, practiced grace as shouts of intruder, and don't let her escape. Erupted from the guards on the ground below, she landed softly in a darkened garden, initially thinking the security was surprisingly lax. Her assessment was premature. She sensed a presence nearby and realized there was a watchdog. From the shadows, the beast emerged. It was no ordinary canine, but a monstrous, two-headed creature with glowing eyes and bared fangs. It let out a low, menacing growl as Elena watched, her expression turning serious. She faced the creature without flinching, drawing a short blade. Acknowledging her opponent was quite formidable, she spoke aloud to her absent master, requesting a reward for her safe return at dawn, an all-you-can-eat feast of pork and a cake piled high with cream. With her arms and face bandaged, Elena stand before Roland, a young woman with short hair and an older butler. She formally concludes her investigation report on the circle surrounding second Prince Jeremy, her expression serious. He expresses immense relief, admitting his heart nearly stopped when he heard she was seriously injured. He urges her not to push herself. Bowing deeply, Elena gratefully accepts his offer of an all-you-can-eat pork and cake dinner, promising to enjoy her leisure later. The butler observes that the palace security must have declined. Elena confirms it was surprisingly lax, making her infiltration relatively easy. However, she recounts a critical moment when the guard dog, a monstrous creature called Cerberus, seized her arm and its jaws. She explains that she managed to shake the beast off thanks to the comb Roland had given her, which shattered in the process. The memory shows her fending off the two-headed hound as the comb emits a protective light. Back in the present, she expresses deep regret over her carelessness, but is relieved that it was only the comb that was destroyed. He dismisses her apology, thanking her for her hard work and promising to give her a new one. Overcome with emotion, Elena expresses her gratitude for such happiness, while the short-haired girl voices her relief that Elena is safe. Roland then shifts the conversation, focusing on what they have learned from the mission. The findings are stark. Prince Jeremy has been secretly plotting his elder brother's downfall, using his own fiancée, Lady Constance, as his operative. Elena clarifies that Lady Adrian was merely caught up in their scheme, and that those involved naively believe Jeremy and Constance's relationship is genuine, a perception Jeremy exploits. The short-haired girl admits she suspected Constance's feelings toward Adrian, but never imagined her wickedness was so profound. Roland adds that no one would suspect a plot involving the prince's own fiancée. Elena elaborates that Constance seems more fixated on the status of being the first prince's fiancée than on Adrian herself. The girl realizes that if the first prince falls, the second prince becomes heir and Constance would become queen, a frightening prospect born of jealousy. It reflects that since the two brothers have never gotten along, it's no surprise Jeremy would seek an opportunity to rebel. Knowing his brother Edward was infatuated with another woman presented the perfect chance. Elena adds that while the people have restrained Edward's recklessness, now is the time for Roland's allies to strike, armed with evidence of terrible deeds. Roland deduces that from Jeremy and Constance's point of view, the annulment of the engagement is the perfect opportunity to bring down both Prince Edward and Lady Adrian simultaneously. The short-haired girl raises a critical concern. Their plan could inadvertently harm Lady Crystal, meaning they must arrange for her protection as well. She expresses her shock that Prince Jeremy was behind the recent department store incident, feeling it's an extreme measure even for Constance's grudge. Elena concurs, questioning the logic of the robbers' actions. She points out that if their goal was to target Lady Adrian, taking hostages and proclaiming an ideology were unnecessarily conspicuous moves. She continued her report, speculating that the demon's involvement wasn't part of Prince Jeremy's instructions. Elena believes that demons dissatisfied with the current pacifist demon Lord may have used the commotion to act on their own. Hearing this, the butler mused that the young master Roland saw on his way to the incident might not have been a mistake after all. His words sparked a connection in Roland's mind. He questioned if a certain Lord Dominic was also involved, theorizing that Lady Constance hired demons to attack the department store specifically to target Lady Adrian. He reasoned the plan had multiple layers to obscure the true client. As he considered this, he recalled a key fact. The owner of the department store is the family of Dominic's own fiancée, Lady Edith. As he laid out the possibility, a sudden understanding dawned on Elena. Roland pressed further, asking what Dominic's goal regarding his fiancée could be. Elena realized the answer. He wanted to break off the engagement. She explained that if the department store were to cause a major scandal, Dominic would have legal grounds to end the betrothal. Even if he didn't know the full extent of the plan, he could have secretly supported the robbers with security information. He agreed, adding that this theory would explain why Lord Dominic was seen walking alone that day, and more importantly, how the robbers managed to infiltrate the high-security elevator hall that Lady Adrian was using so precisely. Roland concluded with concern that they had been too focused on Prince Edward's movements, realizing he wasn't the only noble plotting to break off an engagement. This realization about multiple plots cast a shadow over another group, the talented young men infatuated with Crystal. A grim thought surfaced. There was no guarantee that others among them wouldn't attempt similar schemes in the future. The mounting complexity of the situation weighed on Roland, his expression turning grim. Observing him, Elena stated plainly that they did not have the luxury of time. Acknowledging their lack of time, the group settled in to formulate their next move. Elena began by outlining her original plan to monitor Prince Edward, prevent him from losing control, gather information, and ultimately seek the king's judgment. However, she pointed out the critical flaw in this approach. If it led to the first prince being disinherited, Prince Jeremy would simply move up in the line of succession. Her summary prompted the short-haired girl to reflect on Prince Jeremy's scheming. She laid out the dire state of the royal succession. The first prince is love-struck and lacks kingly qualities. The second prince has severe personality issues and acts on personal grudges, and a woman cannot inherit the throne. The butler added his concern that this situation could create significant confusion over the next royal successor. She continued her analysis, pointing to a historical precedent where, after the direct royal family members died, a duke with a close bloodline was matched with the one remaining unmarried princess, making him the nominal king. She suggested that, following this precedent, they might try to match Roland with the unmarried princess, Rosalind. Elena reluctantly agreed, though she expressed her distaste for the idea. She concluded that if they reported the situation carelessly, the current royal family would be in an unfavorable checkmate, especially since Princess Rosalind is widely known as Roland's stalker. Elena then raised an even more troubling point. Prince Edward's plan to cancel his engagement is progressing quietly onto the surface. The butler voiced his fear that the king, out of love for his son, might ignore a fair judgment. He worried the king would move to eliminate Lady Adrian by pinning false charges on her, lamenting that the king's past indulgence had led to this very crisis. As he spoke, Roland's expression hardened, his fist clenching with resolve. He considered the precariousness of their position. Princess Rosalind warned that if they brought this matter to the king, Lady Adrian would be completely isolated, with the entire country turned against her. Roland agreed, concluding it was best to keep their findings confidential until they could gather enough evidence to prove Adrienne's innocence and counter any potential accusations. He searched his mind for a brilliant method that could resolve everything quickly. As if on cue, Elena struck a pose, suggesting she had an idea. A sense of dread washed over him. The creaking sound of fate seemed louder than usual, warning that a wrong choice could lead to a terrible outcome. Then a thought struck him. The short-haired girl with X clips in her hair announced she had a method that would solve all their problems quite simply. When Roland asked what it was, Princess Rosalind explained the kingdom's custom. If the current royal family is deemed useless, a new king is selected from the extended royal line, which includes the ducal houses. She specified that in such a scenario, the Girardier family, to which Lady Adrian belongs, has the closest bloodline, giving them the strongest claim. The full weight of her words settled upon him. He voiced the startling conclusion aloud. Lady Adrian could become queen, and consequently, he, as her brother-in-law, could become king. He stood stunned by the implication. Elena, however, confirmed that the option certainly exists, regardless of its feasibility. The butler beside her seemed to concur, while the short-haired girl chirped her agreement. He immediately dismissed the idea as absurd, arguing that it was tantamount to usurping the throne and shouldn't even be joked about. The short-haired girl's expression hardened. She countered that their first priority must be the safety of their territory and the people who support the Oriole family. If the royal family becomes an obstacle to that, she declared, it is their duty to protect their own. Elena questioned his pessimism, wondering aloud why becoming king, a dream for most men involving luxury and a harem, was something he opposed. The short-haired girl seemed to agree. Elena then playfully added that if he were to become king, he should consider her for his concubine, suggesting that the fourth position would be ideal, not carrying too much pressure. He recoiled at the suggestion, declaring that as a law-abiding citizen, he could not commit such a reckless act as arbitrarily claiming the throne while a proper royal family still existed. Sighing, he told them not to get ahead of themselves. The short-haired girl conceded his point about following the law, but quickly added that there are loopholes, reminding him of the historical precedent where a man who married a princess became the nominal king. She pressed on, stating it was legally possible to become king without being a prince. Flustered, he admitted the fundamental problem. He had no personal desire for the throne. Elena then posed a sharp question. Should the country's future be entrusted to the foolish first prince or the rebellious second prince? The butler's eyes widened in surprise. Roland could only stammer that surely there were more suitable candidates than him. The short-haired girl chided him for overthinking, insisting the throne was falling into his lap and he should simply consider it an option. Elena agreed, calling him an indecisive hero, as always. Internally, Roland despaired, feeling that everyone was treating this monumental decision as if it were not their problem, urging him to simply resign himself to this unexpected fate. He looked up, his expression pleading as he began to object, even if you say that. But the truth remained. The supposed hero chosen by the divine sword was, deep down, surprisingly cautious and timid. This internal conflict manifested as two figures seated back to back. The present-day Roland, pensive and burdened, and his younger self, withdrawn and sunk. Roland Valerie Oriole recalls his past, beginning with the ridiculously large holy sword he was given as a child. The moment he first held it, the weapon felt like a natural extension of his own body, and in that instant, he understood with absolute certainty that he was the one chosen by the blade. This immense power, however, seemed to have no place in the peaceful world he lived in, where the epic battle between the hero and the demon lord was nothing more than an old tale. He never had to use the holy sword Belgrand, until the day Prince Edward was attacked by assassins. Standing by the prince's side, Roland instantly summoned the weapon to defend him. In response to the threat, he moved without hesitation. In a single, blinding flash of steel and light, he wiped out every single one of the assailants, leaving their bodies strewn across the cobblestones. The prince, unharmed, was ecstatic. He praised Roland's amazing power, calling him his true right-hand man. At the time, Roland felt only relief, glad that he had been able to save his highness. But the elation of saving his friend did not last. He soon found himself standing alone before a closed door, the weight of his actions beginning to settle upon him. Later, he knelt on the floor, staring at his own hands. A profound terror washed over him as he realized the sheer destructive force he possessed, a power that could so easily extinguish human lives. His troubled thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice calling him brother-in-law. He looked up to see a young girl, named Renee, standing in the doorway. She stepped closer, her expression unreadable, and asked him a simple yet profound question. What did he wish to achieve with that power? Her question echoed in his mind, bringing forth another memory. He recalled a conversation with a young Jeremy, who stated his ambition plainly, to become engaged to Lady Adrian and through that union, legally become king. As these memories coalesced, a flicker of understanding, or perhaps suspicion, crossed Roland's face. He expresses his exhaustion with the current topic, but Renee insists that this is where their work truly begins. She reminds him that he was completely beaten at the department store, and their biggest challenge now is to convey his good qualities to His Highness. He counters earnestly, reminding them that their original goal was to awaken the prince and protect Lady Adrian from an unjust engagement cancellation. He feels their methods have deviated too far from that initial purpose. In response, Elena waves a hand dismissively, proposing a simpler solution. She identifies the love-struck prince as the root of all their problems and suggests that if they get rid of him, Lady Adrian won't have to marry an idiot. Roland can only sigh at the suggestion. He immediately rejects the idea, stating that it's not that simple. He admits he can't even reconcile with Adrian, making an engagement absolutely impossible. He warns Elena not to even joke about such a thing. Renee then observes that while he is popular, he is remarkably passive when it comes to romance, which leads her to question if he might prefer men. Roland shouts his denial, but she presses on, reminding him of the time Prince Edward declared he wanted to make Roland his official wife. Seizing the opportunity, Elena interjects with a serious expression. She confirms that such rumors about the young master are indeed circulating, and that there is even a secret society selling items related to them. He is completely taken aback by this news, stuttering. He asks what rumors and what secret society she could possibly be talking about, clearly hoping it's all a joke. Elena clarifies with unnerving precision. The organization is called the Secret Club Slasher Ship Fujoshi Love Affairs. Confused by the unfamiliar terms, Roland can only repeat, the ship of the slasher? She explains that Fujoshi are women who enjoy pairing gentlemen in their fantasies and creating romantic works about them. She specifies that in these circles, Roland is considered the top, the one who embraces, while Prince Edward is the bottom. An image of this very scenario flashes in his mind, and he cries out in horror. Elena concludes her report, revealing that the new business of this secret club is to create and secretly sell lewd illustrated books, or daijinshi, featuring the two of them. He can only stammer, his eyes wide with disbelief and horror. His confusion is met with a frantic outburst from Elena, who insists that selling such things without permission is impossible. Renee, standing beside her, calmly agrees, stating that she also believes it to be impossible. He stammers his agreement, but Renee suddenly changes her tune. She declares that on this specific topic, she cannot agree with Elena at all. With fiery conviction, she proclaims that in the pairing of Roland and Prince Edward, Roland is definitely the bottom, a point on which she refuses to yield. His bewilderment is absolute as he stares blankly into the room where Renee now stands, pointing at him with unwavering certainty. He asks if the books are filled only with images, prompting a new debate. Elena argues that Roland is a beautiful confidant serving the prince, a depiction of true beauty. Renee passionately counters that if he is a beautiful confidant, then the proper course is for him to offer his entire being to the prince. The images presented to him show two conflicting personas, one with a cute appearance that supposedly makes even men propose, clearly meant to be loved, the other, a more assertive version, embodying the legendary hero who should be ready to embrace anyone. The debate escalates as the butler calmly pours tea. Renee, speaking with fervor, explains her interpretation. Roland knows the prince's heart and delves into his deepest sorrows, embracing them with both his heart and body. Her voice continues, graphically detailing how Roland's delicate body would receive the prince's excitement. The words cause Roland to tremble where he sits. The graphic descriptions become too much. He clamps his hands over his ears, squeezing his eyes shut, wishing he had done so much earlier. Outside, the intensity of the conversation seems to have taken its toll on Elena, who leans against a pillar, looking suddenly flustered and overwhelmed. She turns back to Renee, declaring that their argument is endless and proposing they call a truce for now. In response, Renee quotes the legendary masked author, Christine Goda-sensei, explaining that such stories don't require a climax, conclusion, or even meaning. Elena clasps her hands to her chest with a look of pure contentment, agreeing that as long as the gentlemen they admire are united and happy, that is all that matters. Renee agrees, admitting she had forgotten something important. A small smile gives way to a sudden, wide-eyed realization. She marvels at the genius of Christine Sensei, who revolutionized the entire industry in just over a year by introducing the concepts of gentleman's secret hole and gentleman's secret juice. Elena affirms her sentiment. Roland, looking completely exhausted, tentatively raises a hand to ask if their discussion has concluded. The two women turn, momentarily confused about their original topic before recalling it was about the young master's engagement to Lady Adrian. Renee suggests they ignore Roland's wishes and begin their planning, but Roland laments that the conversation derailed because of his own cowardice. Elena then offers a shockingly simple solution. Quickly dispose of both the first and second princes. The suggestion leaves Roland aghast. Renee cautions Elena against being too hasty. As Roland listens, the distinct sound of clicking gears begins to echo in his mind, like the inexorable countdown of a time bomb. Within the grounds of a grand academy, a young woman with long, light-colored hair named Crystal turns, her attention caught as someone calls her name. The one who called is Firmin Gregoire Renec, a young nobleman who asks if she would like to attend that evening's soiree, addressing him as Lord Firmin. Crystal politely demurs, suggesting it would be presumptuous for someone like her to be there. He calls her name once more, his tone seemingly insistent as she stands before him in the arched courtyard. Before she can respond, another young man, Dominic Erhard Almash, approaches with an invitation for a voyage on his family's ship. Crystal expresses that it sounds wonderful, but declines, explaining she is promised to a magician. Almost immediately, an energetic third nobleman, Maximilian Firmin Chaminade, rushes up, inviting her to his domain's port city for a relaxing visit. He reacts with disappointment as she apologizes to Lord Maximilian, stating that she unfortunately cannot take an extended break. Her polite composure begins to crack, her eyes widening in distress as more voices call out her name. Her face flushes as she bows deeply, offering a sincere apology and explaining that she has an urgent matter she must attend to. With a final, hurried plea to be excused, she turns and flees down a long, vaulted corridor, clutching her satchel. Watching her departure from a distance are two other students. Adolphe Rainer Charpentier sighs, lamenting that he failed to invite her again. He remarks to his companion that she is completely different from the women who easily give in. His companion, Estelle Louis Barbastro, agrees, comparing her to a fairy who has descended upon their academy. The focus returns to Crystal Rita Chesty, her expression resolute as she walks on alone. As she passes by, two other female students watch with disdain. One whispers to the other that Crystal is approaching the young nobles again, accusing her of simply flirting because she has a pretty face. She walks through the grand halls of the academy, her mind replaying the cruel rumors that follow her, whispers of a seductress who lives a life of luxury at the expense of the men she charms. A heavy sigh escapes her lips. This unwanted attention and the resulting gossip leave her feeling utterly exhausted. She wonders to herself, how did her life ever come to this? The answer lies in a sudden, jarring event. One day, without warning, she regained all the memories of her past life. That moment of recollection struck as she gazed into a mirror. The reflection was not who she expected, and a jolt of recognition ran through her as she realized she was now Crystal. The name was instantly familiar. She was Crystal, the heroine from the popular Otome game, Rainbow Romanesque. Her initial reaction to this revelation had been one of pure ecstasy. To be reborn as the heroine of a romance game felt like she had finally won at life. But that feeling was fleeting. Now, the reality of her situation feels impossible. She recalls the game's plot. A commoner girl who must endure bullying from villainous characters while pursuing love, all to become the queen of a great nation. For a commoner like her, the stress of such a life would be fatal. She contrasts this with her pathetic past life, where she died in a bathtub due to an unhealthy, shut-in lifestyle. Even with a beautiful new appearance, her old self, a longtime otaku, remains. The hurdle of talking to handsome men without a screen as a barrier is simply too high. With this grim self-awareness, she makes a decision. Unsure if events will unfold exactly as they did in the original story, she resolves to preemptively avoid raising any of the game's plot-triggering flags. Her strategy is simple. For now, she must stay away from the Noble Academy and, more importantly, its main characters. If she has no contact with them, she reasons, then no flags can possibly be raised. Despite her resolve to avoid them, fate seemed to be manipulating events. Crystal found herself transferred to the Noble Academy, just as the game's script dictated. She tried to find a silver lining, reasoning that she should at least be content with being reborn with such a lovely face. That small comfort evaporated as she stood before the imposing academy building. A sense of dread washed over her, her eyes wide with anxiety as she questioned why this had to happen. Yet, she discovered an unexpected perk. Peeking through a window, she saw one of the handsome nobles and had to admit that observing them in person was, to put it mildly, amazing. Even the idiot prince she conceded had a very good face. A sly smile crept across her face as she formulated a plan. This situation wasn't so bad, she decided. As long as she did interact with them, being at the same school would be perfectly fine. She put her plan into action, admiring the handsome boys from a safe distance while successfully making some new friends. As her friends discussed the unusual sight of Lord Dominic and Lord Roland together, Crystal felt a wave of relief. It seemed there were otaku in every world, and the thought calmed her nerves. Her initial worries about how things would turn out began to fade. This second life, she realized with a jolt of excitement, was actually super fun. It was the best. But just as she embraced this newfound joy, she turned a corner and collided with someone. Her eyes met those of a dark-haired young man, and both of them froze in surprise. He reached out a hand as they stood in the stone archway, the impact having nearly knocked a book from her grasp. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Then, the realization of who she had just run into crashed down on her. Her face contorted in absolute panic. The shock sent her stumbling backward, completely losing her balance. As she fell, the young man cried out a frantic apology, insisting that it was his fault. A young man, Roland, catches sight of a girl running away. The girl, Crystal, panics internally, recognizing him as a character from the game, Rainbow Romanesque. She's flustered by his appearance, thinking he's so cute up close that he's practically a beautiful girl. She recalls how dangerous that close call was. Her original plan was to avoid contact with any of the game's capture targets at all costs. However, her efforts backfired spectacularly. She kept encountering them everywhere, and soon, every single one had taken a liking to her and began to pursue her aggressively. With a heavy sigh, her thoughts returned to the present. She sits at a desk in a library, quill in hand, diligently working. Her mind wanders to the game's original plot, recalling how at the graduation party, the 7 rainbow nobles would break their engagements with their respective fiancés to pledge their love to the heroine. She grimaces at the thought. While such a dramatic ending might be acceptable in a game, she understands that in reality, it would be a political catastrophe that could destroy the entire country. And that isn't her only concern. She thinks about the so-called villainesses. The game only ever showed their unpleasant side, but here they are real, kind people. It is only natural for them to be upset if their fiancés suddenly pursue another woman. The guilt of causing such pain would be unbearable. This is why she's been desperately trying to avoid triggering any romantic flags. Yet, everything has backfired. No matter her actions, everyone falls for her. The idea of someone developing such strong feelings after only a few meetings is terrifying now that it's a reality. Among all the suitors, there was one exception. One person who, like the others, had shown interest at first, but then began to observe her from a distance with a more analytical gaze. That person was Roland Valerie Oriole. Crystal still doesn't understand why he alone suddenly cooled off toward her. Despite the mystery, she is grateful that at least one of her potential romantic entanglements has been resolved. Thanks to this, she can enjoy the solitude of a library. She reflects that the dull transcription job isn't popular, meaning the nobles won't venture into such a dusty place. It is, for her, a perfect hideout. She sat alone in a library, contemplating the difficult truth of her existence. Crystal was a noble in name only, the illegitimate daughter of a traveling dancer from a family that had bought its title 3 generations prior. With only minimal financial support, she was forced to take on transcription work simply to make ends meet. With a sigh, she decided that was enough of the tedious work for one day. Untying the ribbon from her hair, she shifted her focus to her true passion, thinking to herself, "Now then, I'll work on this next." Her eyes fell upon a sketch of a passionate embrace. It was a common saying that skills will save you, and she found it to be true. Though it was only a hobby, the sales from her art were not bad at all. More importantly, she knew there were readers eagerly waiting for her next piece. A bright smile lit up her face as she picked up her quill. She understood her true calling wasn't pursuing romance with handsome nobles, but creating for Christine Goethe's new work. She found immense joy in using her mind and her pen to make gentlemen happy with each other in her stories. Her hand moved deftly, sketching the face of a blushing young man. As she looked at the drawing, a particular person served as her inspiration. Lord Roland? Huh, she mused quietly. The thought of him, however, sparked a sudden anxiety. She glanced out the window, a worried expression on her face. Could he have noticed her true identity? Or worse, the true nature of this world? She feared it might be possible for him because he was, after all, the legendary Roland. 5 years ago, within the Demon Lord's autonomous territory, a young woman with horns and twin tails pointed directly at Roland. She identified him as the hero of the Divine Sword and pleaded with him to suppress an impending rebellion led by the Demon Grand Duke and his faction. Roland could only look on in surprise. She continued her explanation, stating that some demons still cling to outdated notions of pride and try to solve everything with force. Information had reached her that the Dorrance Demon Grand Duke's faction, the most radical among them, was planning a riot. She formally requested that Roland, as the hero, prevent this uprising before it could begin. He considered her words carefully, addressing her as the 169th Demon Lord, Yami Unyankapansama. He questioned her request. He suggested that since it was a dispute among demons, it would be more appropriate for her to handle it directly. Roland pressed the point, mentioning that he had heard a demon lord coexisting with a hero should possess enough power to counter such threats on their own. He asked if her own strength wouldn't be sufficient. Yami seemed unimpressed by his lack of enthusiasm, remarking that a demon rebellion should be the perfect cue for a hero. Roland was left bewildered, wondering why the demon lord's side was making such an argument. His gaze fell, a vision of blood-stained hands flashing before him. He admitted quietly that he would rather avoid unnecessary bloodshed if at all possible. Yami acknowledged his point, agreeing that she could indeed stop the rebellion herself. However, she explained that if she, the Demon Lord, were to forcibly subdue her own subordinates, it could provoke further resentment from the radicals, potentially leading to even more rebellions in the future. She warned that such an outcome could lead to innocent bystanders shedding unnecessary blood. With a dismissive wave, she declared that she was not one of the old-fashioned demons who believed in suppressing others through brute force. Her tone shifted to one of modern pragmatism, presenting a stack of money. She explained her preferred method, earning money and using it to keep people quiet, because in this age, justice belongs to those with wealth. She then informed Roland that she had already secured permission from the great temple of the Holy Faith. Her plan was to have him display an overwhelming power that could even stand against the demon lord, which she believed would be enough to pacify the rebels who were unaware of the divine sword hero's true strength. Leaning closer, she looked him in the eye and delivered her final point. Those with power, she stated, have a responsibility that comes with it. She then challenged him directly. Wasn't it time for him to use that power of his correctly? Her words resonated within him. Roland looked down at his hands, silently contemplating the nature of his own power. He considered the demon lord's question, his hands clasped before him. What did he truly wish to achieve with his power? After a moment of reflection, he looked up, his expression firm.